It's got to happen early today. Today it's happening early. We're going live. So it is Friday, and I think we all need some distraction. You know, the world is a crazy place, and things have been crazy. So we're gonna have some fun today. Before I begin, I just want to go over a few things. First of all, this show is brought to you by my book. If you're looking for an awesome book and for practical guide to breathwork, basically the book that I wish that I would have had when I started. And that's the whole reason I wrote it. It just covers all the things that I wish I would have known earlier on. In fact, this is one of those where a lot of people who are breath workers that I know, they've read it and they're like, oh, cool. I picked some things up that I didn't know in it. So it's got charts and it's got all kinds of, let's see here. Here's it's got ways to check your breath patterns and all kinds of other stuff. My brother-in-law, Tucker. Hey, my friend. Oh, dude, it's good to see you. Good to see your face in that little tiny little thing in there. So, hey, so we're talking about a bunch of stuff, but one of the things we're going to be doing today, we're going to have a little distraction. The world's a crazy place. If you're here in the United States, it's just, everybody's nonstop news. And so we're going to take a break. Actually, here in the Midwest, it's a beautiful day. It is a gorgeous, gorgeous day here in the Midwest. Hey, Michael, good to see you. So it is a beautiful day. And hey, good to see you here, Brandon. Here's the thing. So it's about 71 degrees, 72 degrees, which is room temperature. So here it is, November, and it's warm. It's a sunny day. If you left your vitamins in your car, they're ruined. I'm sorry. Sorry, they're done. So a few things also, just to kind of get this out of the way early on, and then we'll get into stuff. I am currently using a product. So this is my product promotion because I got to make a living, but I don't just promote any products. It's actually things I really actually genuinely use. And I've been talking about Base for a while. Notice, I've got the little box here. Oh, look, yes. But I've been using Base for a while. Base is a home-based functional diagnostic program. So basically, like if you want to track certain biomarkers, so for instance, so maybe you want to track your testosterone, or you want to see where you are with stress hormones like cortisol. And of course, right now, being that, in most of Europe and the United States, we've got all sorts of health concerns and we're trying to boost our immune systems. One of the big things that a lot of people have been talking about is boosting their vitamin D. Do I have an adequate amount of vitamin D in my blood? You can check that with Base. So right now I checked my testosterone and it wasn't where I wanted it to be. It was not. I mean, I'm not saying I'm just wilting away and withering away, but I figured I would take the testosterone test and they would probably write me a letter to just congratulate me for having the most testosterone of any man alive. Probably like a picture of me would go into some kind of a book. I don't know. So it's like the book of testosterone. There'd be like first place is me, right? Jesse Coomer is first place. Then second place, Arnold Schwarzenegger in his prime when he was taking steroids, and then all these. But anyway, I was shocked. I was shocked to know that I don't have ideal testosterone, which is interesting to me because a lot of the things that you would expect to be like signals of testosterone being low, I did not have. So for instance, I didn't have the low libido, or I didn't have lack of energy. I still got, I got some muscle. I wasn't having, crazy weight gain or anything like that. It is true, Don. I would say the beard is probably just draining all of my testosterone. But it's weird. And this is for men and women, right? And actually, it doesn't matter. We all have levels of testosterone and estrogen. And it's interesting because men, we have to have a certain level of estrogen in our systems as well. And so we always attribute just testosterone to men and estrogen to women. But obviously, we have the differences. And of course, when they're out of balance, then we have problems. Anyway, if you guys want to try it, you can take a look in the description box of this video, and you can use that coupon code. I believe it's Coomer, or it's either Coomer or Midwestern Method. I forget sometimes. And it is in there, and it gives you 20% off. So try it out. Actually, I'm thinking about coming up with maybe a challenge for our tribe here, maybe in I don't know, January or February, to do some kind of to test these things out. Because, guys, and we live in a world where it's really difficult to plan even, a month out now. I don't know about you guys, but I personally, of course, I do a lot of workshops, and most of my planning, I usually plan, if I do a workshop, I usually have to plan out 3 months in advance. And that's just because I need to be able to, once I have a place where I know for sure I'm going to have the workshop, once I know for sure it's going to happen, I have to just assume it's going to take 3 months for me to be able to get the word out, for advertising to go out, for people to have their ticketing, for questions to get answered. And usually it takes about 3 months. Well, I can't plan out 3 months in advance right now. And I've never had a time in my life, and next month is a big day. Okay. Next month, this guy, I'm turning 40 next month. 44. Yes. So it's a crazy time. But on all of my days, I've never had, I've never lived through a period where I can't really tell you. If someone were to say, hey man, you want to go on like a Caribbean cruise in February or March? I would be like, I don't know what the world is going to look like in February or March. So it's one of those things. Well, thank you guys. Thank you for being surprised. Thank you for being surprised that I am turning 40. Yes, it is actually happening. So, so a little thing about turning 40. So my plan back whenever I've turned 39, so in December of just this past year, I was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to get ultra shredded. I'm just going to get super shredded. And then I'm going to take like pictures. I'm going to get like kind of probably cringy, pictures where people are like, Jesse, I don't know if you should, that's almost too much to share type of pictures. and I was just going to kind of put it out on the internet. I don't know, like a leopard print thong or something, just something really like, yeah, Jesse, no, but it would have been one of those things where they would have been like, okay, hey, he is shredded and I got to give him that, but I really didn't want to see him in a leopard print thong, or maybe my mom might call me and say, Jesse, I think you need to take this off of the internet because, the ladies of my church are complaining, or I don't know, something like that. I don't know. Maybe the ladies of the church wouldn't complain. But anyway, I was going to do something like that. Well, then of course you guys know what happened. And then basically the gyms closed down and I went from a state of like, where it was like a very regular regimented state to, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. My son was home for a lot of, whenever we did like, his daycare closed for a while and things like that. So it was just kind of a crazy time, and I didn't get the chance to really get very disciplined. So what I'm doing now, I'm on a 6-month program. A buddy of mine, I don't know if you have any friends where it's like, I don't know if you have any friends. Just kidding. I don't know if you have any friends where whenever you have a conversation with them, they tell you something that you already knew that you should have really thought about, but for some reason you weren't. Well, I was like, okay, I'm going to gain some mass. I'm going to go get some muscle. Well, what happened was I wasn't eating enough carbs. And so a buddy of mine who is a strength and conditioning coach, he's a fellow Wim Hof method instructor. He and I worked together in Poland this past January. He's like, no, go on. He told me about this 6-month program that he's on. And I'm like, yeah, I need to do something like that. James only has enemies, and and there's nothing wrong with that, James. Sometimes it's more fun just to have enemies. Maybe I don't know, but but basically, and Tucker says Theodore Roosevelt would be proud of me, and that's what I'm doing it for, really. That's what I'm doing it for, Tucker. But basically, but I think I'm just gonna go for some bulk, and so I'm adding carbs into my diet, and I'm trying not to do the junk carbs, but pizza tastes great, and so so that is my big cheat, and I will say today I'm going to tell you a bunch of things that first of all I'm going to tell you a bunch of things. Hopefully that will make you laugh. Hopefully that's going to help you for at least take a little bit of a break. My fellow Americans, and I know people from around the world, because of all this election stuff and all the things in the news. I mean, it's just a stressful time. Let's unplug from that for just a while we hang out together. I'm going to tell you a bunch of things that are true and are probably kind of embarrassing, but in the efforts to start your weekend out right. And so here we go. So anyway, but yeah, so I have been trying to add a little bit more carbs into my diet. And what's interesting is just how hard it is to add carbs into your diet whenever you're used to not adding, you're used to avoiding carbs. So I went for the longest time, I really did a really strong shred, a really strong weight loss thing. Cause I'm 6'1", and for my friends that are not in the United States, I don't know why we use the imperial system here still. I've heard, now this is the rumors, okay? Here, rumors trickle in, and one rumor is that it's somehow supposed to confuse other countries or make it hard to take us over or something like that. I'm like, yeah, I don't think that's really, going to stop any, bullets, but I don't know. The other thing is we're just very stubborn people. And that one actually starts to ring true a little faster for me. But basically I'm 6'1" and tons of fun. And okay, I won't do the full rap, but I'm about 6'1", and that's about 2 meters tall, a little more than 2 meters tall. So if you want, for those of you who are not on the imperial system, if you're on the metric system, like most of the world, if you go like this, okay, so I'm just going to teach you an imperial system method. Okay, so if you go like this, all right, this distance right here is 1 inch. Okay, if you're an average man, and yes, that's how they judged it. So this right here, if you're an average sized man, right here is approximately 1 inch. So I am 6'1". So 6 feet is 2 yards. So a yard is a little bit more than a meter. Anyway, if you can put all that together, I am 6'1", and I weigh I was up to 240 pounds. So that was a lot of meat on my skeleton. A lot of it was muscle, but a lot of it was fat too. And so I really did a major, and I was trying to gain muscle, but I didn't have a lot of discipline. And this was about 5 years ago. And if you know me, if you watch this channel, you know that I'm a big fan of slow changes over time. I'm not the kind of guy who can suddenly change my life. I'm the kind of guy who has to slowly change his life. And so about 5 years ago, I was like, okay, I've got to lose some weight. And it was whenever I really started getting into yoga. It was whenever I was really starting. It was approximately whenever I started getting into Wim Hof method, actually. I was trying to do a lot of these yoga moves, yoga positions, things like that. And my gut was in the way, and my man boobs were in the way and things like that. And so I was like, okay, I've got to thin out a little bit. So I started doing that. And for me, everybody's a little bit different. Like for me, keto, it kills me. And I've done DNA tests. I've done a DNA test, and I highly recommend that. So So, okay, I'll digress for just a second. If you're really curious about how your body works, you have to test it. And that's why I do the base. Oh, that's why I do the base system. But also it's why I did a DNA test. So I went through a DNA test, and then I checked it with, if you do like 23andMe or Ancestry.com or a lot of these bigger names, you can go to Dr. Rhonda Patrick's Found My Fitness website, and you can run your DNA through her thing, and it basically does a full analysis. And I think it's free, or it was free when I tried it. It's gone through multiple updates. I think it's like maybe $10 now, which is so worth it. And basically, what it'll show you is, according to your genetics, okay, is this kind of diet, what are these things going to do for you? What are your health concerns? What are these things? So one of the things for me was that keto was just going to be like, it's actually bad for me. And I always felt like that. Every time I tried to do keto, I just felt terrible. And everybody was like, it's the keto flu, it'll pass, but it never did. And I just felt worse and worse and worse. So it kind of validated that I was like, I really don't think this is for me. But basically, Tucker, you're 16% Viking. I think I'm 21%. Not that we're going to get into some kind of a competition. I'm 21% Scandinavian, mostly English and German for me. All white. Like if you look at the map, my wife is Puerto Rican, so the entire globe is pretty much lit up whenever you look at like where she's from, her DNA. Me, it's just this area of Europe. It's just very European. But anyway, I checked with that, and the thing is, keto is kind of bad for me. So what I did was I started going more of a Mediterranean diet. I cut out all the I cut carbs a lot, and I started to lose a lot of weight, and I got down from 240 all the way down to 205. And it took about a year or two to get down, well, about a year to get really all the way, maybe a little longer than a year. But I was like, well, I have abs and all these things. And so I got in the habit of eating mostly meat and vegetables, and just, or that kind of a protein, fiber, fat, and very low carb. And occasionally, of course, I would eat some other, I would have cheat meals and things like that. But when you get in the habit of doing that, you start to forget that you actually need carbohydrates to build muscle. So for me, it's been a struggle adding carbs, which is kind of weird. Anyway, let's see here. So I was talking about base. We've covered base. We've covered our bases. The other company that I work with, right now I'm working with two companies. I do have some discount codes if you are looking for CBD oil. But I also am working with Kion, and I'm going to talk a little bit about this colostrum. I'm taking their colostrum. But if you're looking for some pretty awesome supplements, the thing is, and I've talked to you guys about this before, there's a lot of companies out there that have really awesome products. But the thing is with Kion, I worked with them. They had this cold thermo challenge, and they wanted me to be a content expert for their cold thermo challenge. So they were challenging their members to take cold showers and things like that. And so they were like, can we have you come on? They knew I wrote the book, A Practical Guide to Breathwork, or A Practical Guide to Cold Training. And there were some people there that really were a big fan of my ebook. And so I was like, yeah, sure. And they were so nice. They've been so nice to me. Like, they've been so easy to work with. So that's why I stuck with them. Their products are good too, but there are a lot of very quality products out there. But man, dude, the nicest people in the entire world. I just talked to, I just had a meeting with one of them, one of the people that work for Kion yesterday. Insanely nice. Like, it's really, really nice to do business with them. So I do have a coupon code. And if you do purchase Kion, please use that. A little bit of that money goes back to the show, and you get 15% off as well. So we both win on that. Let's see here. So having said that, first of all, I want to just say, guys, happy Friday. It's a beautiful day in the Midwest, and it sounds like it's a beautiful day elsewhere in the world too. So, so it's nice to have you here. We're going to hang out for a little while. I'll take some questions. I got a few things I want to talk about, but the first thing I really want to talk about is the fact that, you know, the world is crazy. But the thing is, we have to understand, we occasionally have to unplug. And what I've seen a lot, especially in the past week, is people really glued to their TVs and to the news and to, you know, social media and the news outlets. And of course, there's a lot of things going on in the world right now. But what I see is an enormous amount of anxiety, just building anxiety. And I'm not saying that I'm immune to it either. It's one of those things that I think we have to be really careful not to let it boil over and just make us miserable. So that's something that let's kind of just take a minute to unplug. Of course, we're going to talk about breath work today. We're going to talk about some cold exposure. But as we go forward, I feel like just having the intention, especially going into this weekend, it's Friday. I think it's important to just say, you know what, I got to unplug. I have to do this for my own sanity. There's a story. And here's the thing. I keep trying to make a YouTube video to tell you this story. I don't know if you guys have seen Doodly. Have you seen Doodlies? First of all, I'm noticing we're having a conversation about potatoes, and I just love my audience. Okay, so potatoes, yeah, there are carbs in potatoes. There's also a lot of, if you're going to do, I'm going to get off topic, but that's the whole point of today. We're just getting off topic. We're having fun. I'll get back to my story in a minute. But with potatoes, I will say, when it comes down to it, have you guys seen Penn and Teller? Penn Jillette is, first of all, hilarious. And he did this weight loss with just the potato diet. Actually, Scott Carney's recent book, The Wedge, there's a whole chapter in there about how he and his wife did this potato diet. And essentially, if you decide you want to lose weight, one way to do it, and it's a kind of a biohacking thing, is to just eat nothing but potatoes. And so so basically, as long as it's potatoes, right? Now, you're not going to go out and eat potato chips, but you can make your own, right? So what he would do, he had a special, what Scott Carney did, I was talking to him, and he had a special what was it? Recipe, a quote unquote recipe called The Wedge, trademarked for his book. And basically what it was is he sliced potatoes really, really thin, baked them for a while, and then they would be sort of like a potato chip, not really fully there, but sort of like it. But basically, just eat the full. A lot of times people, the whole goal of the potato diet is if you're hungry, all you can eat is a potato. And what a lot of people do, you can put salt and pepper, and that's it. It's not like you can have like ketchup or anything, but salt and pepper or whatever. And then just, you can eat them raw, you can eat them baked, but you can't have toppings. It's just potatoes. And so what it does, and the thing is about potatoes is that they're so starchy that it satiates you pretty quickly. And so if all you're eating is just the potato, first of all, it's not like you're eating it for any kind of real pleasure, right? You're not eating it for any kind of I really enjoy the taste of just a bland potato. You're eating it simply to survive and not starve to death. And then on top of that, you're getting your minerals. You're getting most of it. A lot of it's water and fiber. So you're getting a lot of that stuff. And essentially you get satiated really quickly. So you're actually taking in fewer calories throughout the day. And you can see the huge difference in Penn Jillette for the before and after. And he what he says is that it really helped him with his relationship with food. So he was like, okay, what is it that I'm actually trying to get out of food? Is it that I'm trying to find pleasure and this is the happiness in my life? Or is it sustenance? Is it something that it's fueling my body? Now, I personally have never done the potato diet, nor do I actually plan to. Everybody except for Penn Jillette I've actually never spoken specifically to him, but everybody that I've talked to, Scott Carney and his wife, I talked to them a little bit about the potato diet that they went on. And if you want to look at that interview, it's on my channel, and it's like my first or second podcast. It's on Apple Tunes or Apple Spotify and all those. But basically, they were talking about how it was something. Even in the book, the chapter on that is pretty short because you can tell they didn't want to do it very long. I think he made it a little bit longer than she made it, but I think it was a matter of a week, and they were like, "No, this is enough." But they both lost weight. And so it's just one of those things. If you want to, so for me, it would not work because who knows? Maybe it would. I haven't tried it. But basically, it's one of those things where for me, I believe in slow changes over time. Unless it's something like a heroin addiction or something like that, where it's like, okay, we need to get you off now, today. If it's an eating thing, if it's an exercise thing, for me, and for everyone that I've trained, and for really everyone that I've actually seen have great success, with very few exceptions, it's a matter of, can you stay with it? It's not a matter of how big the change is. It's a matter of how consistent the change is. So I would rather see a person, do minor changes. And then what happens is, if you make one healthy change, one positive change, and you can keep that for a couple weeks, then what happens is suddenly you've got a new normal. You got a new normal. That's what you'll eventually have. So that it's no longer, hey, I'm doing this change. It's, hey, I'm living my normal life, because you've changed your life at that point. And then once you get to the new normal, then you can say, okay, I'm going to take another step to change in a positive direction. Okay, cool. So then next thing you know, you've made 20 changes over the course of a year because you've been able to keep those. And that's how you make those long lasting changes. It's not this, and that's the thing. So some of you guys, if you've read my book, I'm all about props today. If you've read my book, I do talk about how I was addicted to drugs. I had a drug addiction, and it's one of those things where, I'm not proud of it. And it's something that I don't really like to talk about that much. I've been meaning to actually, it's been 10 years since I quit my addiction. And it was 10 years as of July of this year. And I was like, I'm going to make a video and I'm going to send it out and I'm going to put it on my YouTube, how I quit my addiction. And I made it, and it was like a 20-minute video. And I'm like, yeah, I'm just not really ready to share all of that yet. So it will come out eventually. I do write about it a little bit in my book, but here's the thing. I think a lot of times with addiction, and it's not just drug addiction, it's also habits that we fall into. And sometimes a person's addiction it's not as obvious as a drug addiction was. Like mine was an incredibly obvious thing to me. Okay, yeah, I'm hopelessly addicted to this drug. Well, okay, so for some people, it's being in bad relationships. I'm just addicted to bad relationships. I'm addicted to, an abusive partner, or I'm addicted to maybe not a physically abusive partner, but I'm addicted to going out with people who don't respect me. Or, there's all sorts of things like that we get into these habits. Maybe it's alcohol, maybe it's smoking, maybe it's who knows what it is. And then like what happened for me was, okay, a lot of people think suddenly you're going to have like the clouds are going to part, and then suddenly you're going to have this energy or this life-changing, I don't know, spirit speaking from the sky, and suddenly it's a 180-degree turn and your life changes that day. Yeah, maybe that happens. I have never seen that happen to an individual that I've ever known. And anybody who I've ever talked to who's claimed that, they were totally full of it. Like what I've always seen and what's happened for me is, okay, it's going to take some time, and it's going to take some effort, and it's going to take some time to redirect and to change your course. But if you put in the work, you can do it. And it's one of those things where I think a lot of times people bite off more than they can chew. It's like with weight loss. With weight loss, I think oftentimes people say, okay, I need to lose 100 pounds this week. Actually, I'm in the process of making a pretty awesome video. I'm going to give you a hint right now. I'm not sure. I feel like the video might be too long, but then again, it's so much. It was so much fun to make. Like I'm at the point I'm not sure what I want to cut, but really it's with everything. Like, have you seen a lot of these weight loss pills or programs? Lose 4 to 14 inches in just a week, and people, we want to believe it's that easy. We want to believe that something like that is possible. And it really preys on our I don't know, it preys on us and makes us feel like, well, maybe they finally found it. Maybe they finally found that one thing, that secret, that one simple trick, right? That actually does it. And I have fallen prey for that. I absolutely did many times. And I'm like, well, I guess all I have to do is take this supplement, and then I will no longer have any problems with this or that, or what was it like? So, okay, here's one. I worked in a nutrition store for many years of my life. So I've worked around the nutrition industry. Do you guys remember, and you guys may or may not, but do you guys remember, I remember a day before penis enlargement pills. And then I remember when they hit the shelves. And I mean, guys, I'm sorry, it doesn't work. You look at the ingredients and you're like, maybe it'll work. You're like, there's some kind of like a hope and a dream. Is like, yeah, this for $39.99, that's all that I'll just take this bottle of pills, and then suddenly I'm Don Juan, and like, we have all of these things that prey on our insecurities, when in reality, it all comes down to really building ourselves from within. So when it comes to quitting an addiction, or to weight loss, or any kind of meaningful change in your life, and I'm just saying, as a guy who's gone through a lot of this, and I still struggle with it, for me and for everyone I've ever seen, it's always a matter of just small changes and then continue, like, sticking with it. It's not a matter of, I made this one change and suddenly everything changed. Yeah, that first step, if you didn't take that first step, those other steps would never have happened. So in that respect, yeah, it is that one, thing. But the thing is, that second step is oftentimes harder than the first, and the third step can be even harder than that, and the fourth step can be harder, and eventually you get better at making the steps. Eventually you're like, okay, I know that it's going to suck for a little while. I know that my natural habits and inclinations are going to be against me for a little bit, but but I know that now, and I've actually worked through this enough times. Like, I've done it enough times to know, okay, as long as I make it through the first week or two, for me, in my experience, and this is coming from a guy who, I've made a lot of major changes, like, a lot of stupid and really destructive habits in my life I've overcome, and I'm still overcoming. But what I've found is 2 weeks. If you can stick with something for 2 weeks, for me, if I can do 2 weeks, I can do 2 years. And that doesn't mean that you're not going to fall back, and that doesn't mean you're not going to have times whenever you mess up or whatever. But it means, okay, those first 2 weeks are the hardest. Those first 2 weeks, you're rewriting neurology. Those first 2 weeks, your biochemistry is trying to resettle. And I remember, I'll never forget my first 2 weeks after I quit my addiction. And it was funny, on my first day. So whenever you quit an addiction, whether it's, I don't care what addiction, even if it's caffeine or cigarettes or whatever, I've had to quit those too. But I will admit that when it comes to caffeine, I'm like Mark Twain. I don't know if you've ever heard Mark Twain's, his saying about tobacco is that tobacco is the easiest thing to quit. I've done it a million times. Right. And so caffeine for me, last month, well, let's see. No, it was the month of September and August. Much of August and September, I was caffeine free. And then after about the mid to late September, I started adding caffeine in my life again. And now, now I'm back into the caffeine world. And I love caffeine. Yeah, tea and chocolate is love. Yeah, I love chocolate. I love caffeine. But I know that the caffeine is one that I struggle with. It's one of those weird things where I like it too much. And so I really do try to keep the I guess the lid on it. But with anything else that I've had to quit, it's always a matter of incremental like changes. It's never like, okay, I'm doing it today and then tomorrow it's gone. There does have to be a first day though. And so the first day I was off of my addiction, I had to make a really difficult phone call. I was in the middle of grad school and I had to call one of my professors. And the thing was, I had made arrangements to rent his house. He had a second house. So I was going to rent his house. Me and a buddy of mine, we were going to rent his rental home and live there for my last year of grad school. And at the last minute, my roommate or my friend and I, who were going to be roommates, we found a better deal and we were broke. I mean, so broke. And so so what happened was I had to call him and tell him this. And I knew he was going to be upset. And I knew he was going to be the guy writing my grade. I had him actively for classes. Actually, he was part of my thesis present. He was he was very incremental in whether or not I would pass or do well. And in graduate school, man, if it's not an A, you feel like it's failure. So I had to call him and it was on my first day of no drugs in my system. And it was pretty tough, but I did it and it made me stronger, because after I did that, that was an accomplishment. That was a little feather in my cap or I don't know, an arrow in my quiver, whatever metaphor you want to use. But it was something that I said, okay, I've done that. I faced that fear without the crutch. It's like, I think a lot of times with athletes, caffeine and exercise. I know a lot of when I was doing MMA, I can't wait to get back until this season of the illness that shall not be named, that we all know what it is. Until that is over, I'm not going to be able to train jujitsu, which sucks. But a lot of us, we were always like, yeah, we need pre-workout before we train jujitsu, which is actually not a great idea because it gets you in this state of fight or flight whenever you really do need to. Jujitsu, for those of you who practice, who know anything about jujitsu, I mean, it's something where you need your brains. It's really a brain game. It's not necessarily like, yes, there's speed, agility, flexibility, all those things are involved, but it has more to do with your ability to stay relaxed in the face of stress. And so everybody that we were all doing caffeine and we were like, jittery and stuff like that. Of course, after a while, you just need caffeine to function in any kind of real sense. But yeah, when it comes to any kind of change, incremental changes over time, I'm going to take a sip. This is branched chain amino acids. They're just tasty and it's a nice Friday and I'm just going to have a sip. Maybe it's going to fuel my gains. I don't know. Anyway, so we're here and we're trying to get ready. The winter is coming. Now this week is going to be warm, which is good because me and my family, we can actually do some yard work. So we moved to this new neighborhood and everybody has really nice yards here. And we've fallen behind. So so we've got leaves everywhere. So this weekend, we're going to be doing a lot of raking of leaves and things like that. And it's going to be a super, super nice weekend to do that. So that's great. But we've already had frosts here. We've already had, some freezing temperatures, which have been great. You might've seen my Instagram. If you don't follow me on Instagram, check me out. I try to post whenever I'm doing like especially outdoor exposures to kind of give you an idea of what I'm doing that day. I was doing a lot of what I called the frost walk. So, just walking, it was the grass is all frozen over, and it's perfect for training your feet for those, to get ready for snow walking whenever the snow happens. So it's been cold. It's going to get cold again. So for most of the guys and gals watching, I know you're into probably breath work, right? We're into biohacking, nutrition, health, and philosophy. And that's something that I've noticed with my crowd. And I'm really happy that this tribe is into philosophy. Every time I say anything, every time I quote a philosopher or anything like that, it's like, okay, I've gotten some really good response. I actually even had a really good discussion about existential philosophers with one of my with a subscriber. I'm like, dude, I need to be talking about this more often. This is just fun stuff. So when it comes to philosophy, Stoicism, of course, is I would say one of the most useful and applicable schools of philosophy that is out there. And I think it's one of those that is often misunderstood, because a lot of people think of Stoicism as something that it's turning off your emotions and just saying you don't have any emotions, and I'm going to choose not to feel anything. And I am, and that's not really what it is. It can come across like that. And a lot of people do portray it like that. But whenever it comes to Stoicism, I forget the name of the philosopher, or I'd quote him specifically, but I'll paraphrase a philosopher whose name I cannot remember. But basically he said that Stoicism is the domestication of emotion. So the domestication of emotion. So it's the difference between a wild stallion that you can't control, that's just controlling you, right? If you were riding on the back of, if somehow you were able to stay on the back of a wild stallion, or some kind of a wild animal, yeah, it would be a crazy ride. They would be in control. But when we practice Stoicism, we are domesticating it. So it's the difference between, an animal that's just wild and you can't control it, and it's basically in control of you, versus, okay, I'm going to tone it down. Because one of the misconceptions that I had early on of Stoicism was that I'm supposed to just turn off my emotions. And actually this is one of the reasons why I left that whole school of thought for quite a while. It was whenever I was my wife and I, we were going through a huge loss. And then, I was looking at these Stoics. I'm like, you guys have no emotion. Like, you have to feel emotion. You have to honor emotion. It's emotions are not a bad thing. It's just our behaviors and our actions whenever we're in the throes and the grips of emotions. And this is, of course, you know what? I didn't mean to talk about this today, but I think the way the world is right now, it's incredibly applicable. And this is something that we have to watch in ourselves, because it's easy to get angry. It's easy to be moved by our emotional state, whenever in reality, it should be us. We have to honor those emotional states. It's okay to be angry, right? It's okay to be sad and depressed and all these other things, but it's not okay, to just let those things take you and have no regard for reason or your intellect, right? It's finding that balance. I don't think it was Marcus Aurelius, Chuck. Of course, Marcus Aurelius is like the godfather of Western Stoicism, right? So, Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius, the original OGs of Stoicism. And really, when it comes to Marcus Aurelius, that's some really good reading, right? And how would you feel? And we're just going to go on this topic for a little bit, because eventually we will make it to preparing for winter breath work. But how would you feel if later on, like Marcus Aurelius, he was writing in a journal, meditations. I always think about this. One of the greatest works of philosophy in general was never meant to be published. It was never meant to be read by anybody else. And then you've got, of course, Seneca. Absolutely, Colin. Oh man. And that's another thing. If you follow me, I'm not trying to promote my Instagram, but I do like to do quotes a lot of times that I feel like are pertinent. And oh man, Seneca is a treasure trove. But anyway, but Marcus Aurelius never meant to publish his meditations. They were just his own personal musings and his basically his journal. And then later on they were published, and then I'm so glad they were. But how would you feel if you accidentally wrote, you wrote one of the greatest works of philosophy and it was published without your ever knowing it? And then maybe, you come back maybe 1,000 years later and you're like, oh, everybody's reading my journal. I don't know. Maybe it would be interesting, I think. But yeah, James, thanks for following me on Instagram. And keep in touch, if you, and that's a great place to also ask me questions. Today, we're having a little bit more fun than normally. I try to talk about specific things, but guys, we need a break. I think all of us, especially here in the United States, but guys around the world, you guys are watching us and you're saying, hey, these guys are having a crazy time too. Not to mention, I was just talking to a buddy of mine in France yesterday, and we were talking about publishing, and he's like, yeah, because I can't go anywhere because all recreational activities are canceled now because all the lockdowns over there. So it's a time whenever we need to we have to unplug. We can't constantly be taking everything. We have to have some jokes. We have to have some fun. So anyway, so yeah. But anyway, so there's Stoicism, and then Existentialism is probably my favorite school right now. I'm not as well versed in Existentialism. Soren Kierkegaard is probably my favorite. I quote him in my book. My favorite quote of Soren Kierkegaard is that anxiety is the dizziness of freedom. And I love that quote because it is this, I think he really nails it. The dizziness of freedom whenever you have anxiety. And of course, in my book, one of the things that I do is I really talk about anxiety, and I was fortunate enough to make friends with a neuroscientist, neurophysicist. I talked about this before, but I was fortunate enough to have a guy who he's a lot of fun to talk to. It's funny whenever everybody's got these different, things in life. And for him, he doesn't really have any desire to really like share what he knows as far as like with the public. He's more interested in research, right? So he's, it's kind of like these incredible genius people. There's some people that are they have to know the answers to the universe. And this guy, I'm telling you, man, every time I talk to him, there's not enough time. Like 2 or 3 hours will go by, and I'm just really happy that he's willing to talk to me for that long. But man, I'm picking this guy's brain, and we're talking about the nature of consciousness on a scientific level, and it's just like, whoa, dude, this is awesome. But it's interesting because you had Soren Kierkegaard who really nailed it. That anxiety is the dizziness of freedom. And what we find out now, on the scientific side of anxiety, is we have these chemicals in our system, specifically the dopamine feedback loop. So dopamine is this chemical in our brain. And a lot of people believe that dopamine is like a reward chemical. Like whenever I pick up my phone and stuff like that, we always talk about the dopamine hit, right? Well, the dopamine hit from picking up my phone and checking Instagram or whatever. Well, in reality, you are getting a dopamine hit, but the dopamine hit is not as a result of you checking Instagram. It's not the result of it. The dopamine hit is what gets you to check Instagram. The dopamine hit is what makes you check the news to see who won the election. The dopamine hit causes you to feel the urge to explore or to find out things. Basically, the ultimate goal of this dopamine hit is it's in service of your motivational network in your brain, which is in charge of basically solving uncertainty. So like, and if you think about it, this is an incredibly useful thing for humanity to solve uncertainty, but it's the reason why we can't leave. We can't leave a mystery unsolved. There was a show in the 90s called Unsolved Mysteries. It was a great show and everybody loved it. And it's also why cliffhangers, like I remember back in my day, right? I told you I'm turning 40, but when I was a kid, you didn't have as many cliffhangers. Whenever you watch a television show, there would be a narrative arc and it would be over at the end. Now every show is like, hey man, you're gonna have to watch the next one because I'm not gonna tell you what happens. And it drives us crazy. And what happens is there's uncertainty. And our motivational network in our brain says, I need to solve this. So it keeps you thinking about it. And the dopamine gives you a nudge and it encourages you to solve whatever uncertainty there is. And so whenever we're experiencing anxiety, one of the things that is often triggering that is the dopamine feedback loop. For instance, how many of us can relate to, I'm trying to go to sleep, but I can't get to sleep because I can't stop my brain from thinking, right? I would imagine many of you are either meditators or you'd like to be. And when I say you'd like to be, when I started meditating, I fell in love with the idea of meditation, but I also found out that I was terrible at meditation. And that's why I got into breathwork, and breathwork has been huge benefit to my meditation practice. But the thing is, this dopamine feedback loop, and Colin, you make a great point. He says dopamine is the motivator for the reward. It's true. It's not the reward. It's the motivator. And whenever you eventually solve the mystery, or whenever you had whenever you make the discovery. So for instance, if you think about this, it works in multiple ways. For instance, it keeps you from danger, right? So I don't want to make my house, or maybe I'm going to make camp or whatever, right? Think Neolithic humans, right? Because our system dates back to Neolithic humans, whenever we were hunters and gatherers. And so you were going to make camp or you were going to sleep somewhere. Well, you need to make sure that there's no snakes and it's a safe area. You need to make sure the uncertainty of the area is solved, and in order to survive. And of course, it translates today to, did I lock all the doors? How many, you don't have to show me a show of hands, but I know if you're like me, occasionally I'll just wake up in the middle of the night and I'm like, I'm pretty sure I remember locking all the doors. And then if I don't go walk to get up and then check all the doors, it just drives me crazy. So that's that dopamine feedback loop. And it's interesting that, it's basically what caused us to explore new territories as well. What's over that hill? I can't stand not knowing what's over that hill. What's in that forest, right? Because whenever you find a new place, maybe it's new, it's good things. And interestingly enough, whenever we're checking our cell phones and we're checking Instagram and things like that, we're trying to solve that. What's really happening here, we're trying to solve the uncertainty. And so if I check my Instagram, maybe I'll find out that I have a bunch of likes, or maybe there's a comment from a girl I like or a guy I like or whatever, right? We're hoping for the best. And also we're thinking about the worst possible case scenario. Maybe I should check, or just in case I don't want to miss out, or maybe, there's a message that I didn't check and I need to do that. So it's this weird combination of hoping for the best and preparing for the worst, which, hey, that is a quote. We get that quote. Anytime you ever hear somebody say, I'm preparing for the best, but hoping for the best, preparing for the worst, that's Marcus Aurelius. We should hope for the best, but be prepared for the worst. Marcus Aurelius, Meditations. I can't quote the actual where it was in there, but that's Marcus Aurelius. And so when we're practicing Stoicism, we're actually trying to tame this. But here's the thing. So anxiety is the dizziness of freedom. I'm coming back to the quote from Kierkegaard. So we have freedom to do anything we want. We have way more freedom than what we know. And actually that's something, and for my French friends, I'm going to pronounce Jean-Paul Sartre. and anybody who's French or who understands how badly I pronounce that is just like, oh my God. Yeah. Jesse, you and your Fahrenheit and your feet and your miles. You just can't. I'm sorry. It's I don't have the linguistic capability of pronouncing Sartre correctly. But Sartre talks about, he says we have way more freedom than we ever would admit. And we have way more freedom than we ever give ourselves credit for. And in fact, we're blind to most of the freedom that we have. And whether this is willing or unwilling, he wrote so much about this. But we've got this freedom. The other thing is, when we come to a decision, our brains are so powerful that we can make predictions. And this is ultimately one of the most fundamental aspects of consciousness, according to my buddy, who's the neuroscientist, because I love asking about consciousness. I want to know more about this, but we can run simulations, and we have the capacity to run these simulations. If I do this, these are the possible things that may occur. If I do that, these are the possible things that may occur. And we have these incredibly powerful brains, which is a blessing because, hey, it allows you to make these amazing simulations. You can really think of a lot of possible scenarios. You can be prepared for bad times. You can be planning for things that will make good times happen. It's why, humans, we dominate the planet, right? And as you go further down in the chain, like for instance, your dog can do that too, but it's more simple. It's far simpler. And then, as you go down, you get less and less of that capability. But because of this, plus our dopamine feedback loop, we experience anxiety. We're running these simulations. These things may occur. And the problem is we don't really know what is going to happen until it actually happens or until we take action. So and the worst time of day to have these simulations happen is nighttime when you're trying to go to sleep. So, and this is, of course, when it normally happens, right? You wake up, most people, it's 2:00 in the morning, you wake up and I don't know, you got to pee or something like that. And then you just remember all the things that are uncertain in your life or the things that are going to happen tomorrow. And then suddenly you're like, I can't solve these problems today. Or at least not right now. I need to sleep more so that I can not be a zombie tomorrow and relying on caffeine and all this other jazz. But what happens is you start coming up with these simulations, and your dopamine feedback, your motivational network feeds you more dopamine and says, here, figure it out. We got to figure it out. And you can't, because there's nothing you can do about it, right? But your brain doesn't want to, collaborate with you on this. Your brain's like, figure it out. It's like, it's obnoxious. And what happens is, because you can't figure it out, and your motivational network says, I must figure it out. Your motivational network says, well, maybe we need to send Jesse, or, maybe we just need to send a little bit more dopamine than last time so that we give a little bit bigger nudge. So it starts sending out more dopamine. And then you're like, I still can't figure it out. And in the middle of the night, the problem is with the middle of the night too. So this is what happens. So in the middle of the night, you're not making serotonin like you would normally be making serotonin. And for those of you who have ever been depressed, you might have been on a serotonin, or what is it? A selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. SSRI. Yeah, you've been on maybe an SSRI. Okay. Serotonin is the thing that helps us have a positive outlook on life and on any situation. Well, at nighttime, whether you're depressed or not, right? If you have a perfectly healthy brain, at nighttime, your brain's making melatonin. Okay. And that's the flip side. That's the nighttime version. And it's not the happy chemical that makes you feel positive about everything. It's the chemical that's supposed to try to help you go to sleep. So everything seems worse. So not only do you have this dopamine feedback loop and all these different simulations that you're trying to figure out, but you can't do anything about them. So your brain keeps sending you more dopamine. You are low in serotonin. So all of these problems, not only does your motivational network say, we got to solve it now, every time you think about it, you're in a low serotonin environment in your brain. So you have a negative bias on everything. It probably won't work. She probably hates me worse than she probably really hates me. I bet it's going to be awful. Man, I'm going to get fired tomorrow. All these like really negative things are more naturally going to happen simply because you've got that low serotonin in your brain. And then there's another, and there's more, right? It's almost like the worst infomercial you've ever heard in your life. But wait, there's more. So Billy Banks, rest in peace. Anybody remember Billy Banks? Anyway, after a while, your brain says, okay, this dopamine is not doing the trick. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to send a signal to the locus ceruleus of your brain. And that the locus ceruleus is going to give you what we would consider more of a global dose of noradrenaline. So in America, we call it noradrenaline. In everywhere else, pretty much it's called norepinephrine. Normally I call it norepinephrine because I learned about it from Europeans, but noradrenaline, norepinephrine, same thing. So norepinephrine is what I'm going to call it. This is a neurotransmitter that makes you incredibly sensitive. So it makes all of your senses really, very sensitive. So you can smell better, you can hear better, your sight is better. Everything is, you're more sensitive in every way when you have this high level of norepinephrine, which is terrible when you're trying to go to sleep. And then it's also awful if you're in a situation where you can't really do anything. And the reason why we had this is because, for instance, if you are in a life or death situation, especially back in Neolithic age, right? Back in the olden times, norepinephrine was incredibly helpful because you could smell your enemies. You could smell the predator. You could hear your predator, or you could hear your prey or your enemies. Having heightened senses actually was a really positive thing, and it helped us survive for millennia, right? But when you're sitting there in bed, it doesn't help you at all. It just makes you more miserable. So I've told you a lot of this, just and this is something that I love how Kierkegaard knew this without the benefit of science. It's the anxiety. Anxiety is the dizziness of freedom. It's just and think about all these things are happening, and you're just like, how are you supposed to make it? And of course, that's where breathwork really comes in handy, because with breathwork, we have shown that there are breathing techniques where you can actually, it's been scientifically shown where you can reduce that level of norepinephrine in your brain. So reducing that. You can switch your autonomic nervous system to a state from fight or flight, which is what you're probably in if you're up all night freaking out. You're switching over to rest and digest. And then what that's going to do, it's going to put you in a state where you're best and you're most likely to be able to go to sleep. Also, if you haven't already checked out the video I uploaded yesterday, it's about focus, how to train your brain's ability to focus. So if you can focus on your breath, you're not focusing on the simulations or those problems, those unknowns. You're actually able to focus on your breath, and that will keep you from focusing on those simulations. And ideally, because you're not focusing on those simulations, that dopamine level is going to drop, and you're going to be able to get back to sleep. I have a video, I think it was last week or the week before, where I give you my strategy, because this has happened to me. This has been something I've struggled with my whole life. And I wish I could say that, oh, it never happens anymore, but no, it's still something I have happen. I think being a dad has exacerbated it, or I don't know, the world is a crazy place, but there are some exercises you can do. And so what I like to do, and please watch my video, I need the views, but the real trick for me is to be more present with my breath and be more present with my physical body. So physically a little bit more present. So what I'll do is I'll get into usually a cadence of 4 seconds for an inhale, 8 seconds for an exhale. And then I will clench my feet. And I always remember, it's funny. I learned this technique from a yogi, but I always think back to Die Hard, the very first Die Hard. There's this scene where he kind of like clenched his feet into the carpet and it made him feel better. Well, I clench my feet as if I'm trying to make a fist, and then I relax it. I clench it, hold it there for about 5 seconds, maybe 10, and then I relax my feet. Then I clench my butt, and this is actually the most powerful part of it. You really clench those glutes really strong for about 10 seconds, and then release those, and then your hands really make a fist, and then release that. And then as you're doing that, you're focusing on your breath, right? So you're doing you're focusing on two things that are not your problems. And I always find, now I may need to repeat this, but I always find that this helps. Another thing is ocean breathing, and that's a technique that is in my book. And for my Patreon members, thank you for being Patreon members. My Patreon members, you can find, I have a tutorial on how to do ocean breathing. And then there's some sessions in there that use ocean breathing as a way to calm the nervous system. And actually, it's interesting when you use ocean breathing. It's also in yoga, they call it Ujjayi breath. But you're actually, it helps you get better neuromuscular control over your breathing mechanism. So it's kind of a cool thing there. Anyway, okay. So the thing is, we experience these things, and we experience anxiety. And oftentimes when you look at existential philosophy, it's talking about how oftentimes anxiety is what causes us to be basically slaves to our emotions, slaves to the masses, followers, instead of being original human beings, which I want to encourage everybody to do. And by being an original human being, oftentimes people mistake that and say, I'm going to be an original human being, just like so-and-so. And it's like, no. No. Yes, maybe so-and-so is an original human being. Maybe that's what you meant. But really, it's like, I'm going to be an original human being, just like me, right? Just like I'm going to decide who I'm going to be. What are my values? What is it that I find to be important? How am I going to build this life and create myself? And self-creation is something that, that's probably the greatest gift that we have as human beings, is that we can actually decide who we are going to be. And oftentimes we think that is all that means. It's interesting. So I think a lot of times we think that means, well, there's a few ways I can identify myself that the masses normally use to identify myself. So I will identify myself using these options. Okay. I'm a leftist or rightist, or I'm a man, or I'm a woman, or no. Yeah, I guess you can have those as part of your identity, because you're free to identify however you want. But what do I find valuable? What is it that motivates me? What is it that I want to contribute to myself and the world? What are attributes that I'm going to espouse? And, it comes down to, what are things that I don't like about myself that I want to change? And for those of you who've been with me this whole time, and in this hour that we've been talking, that's really been a major journey for me. Is like, there's a lot about me that I really like, but there's a lot about me that I really didn't like. And so trying to figure out how to make those changes while keeping the good parts, and, kind of removing the parts that I didn't want to have as a part of me. And that's something where I'm not done. And I don't think anybody's ever done creating themselves. And so anyway, let's take a look at some questions. And then, man, that hour flew by. So, hey, let's take a look. Do we have any questions? I don't even know if we have any questions. We've got a lot of awesome. James had to leave real quick to check to see if he locked the front door after I mentioned that. Oh, geez. Yeah. And Carlin, we have to have fun. We have to laugh. Laughter is an incredibly amazing medicine. And you look at people who make it through these terrible times through history, and oftentimes you see that it's a matter of having a sense of humor. And sometimes it's a sick sense of humor. You're my people. It's okay. You don't have to. Your jokes don't have to be all lovey-dovey and hunky-dory. It's okay to joke. however you want to joke, as long as you're laughing and you're not causing anybody any harm. Let's see here. Yeah, let's see. Hey, we have a question about going to the Wim Hof workshop. So Sat Strass, he says, off topic, going to go for Wim Hof method workshop. Anyone here have any tips for a first timer feeling a little bit scared and excited at the same time? So, hey, brother, if you're still, and it's tomorrow. So if you're still on here, let me know. But if not, hopefully you'll watch this in a little bit. Basically, when it comes to going to a Wim Hof method workshop, I actually do have a video. If you go to my channel, I give you all the things, all the ways you should prepare for a workshop. Oh, awesome. You're still here. Great. So go to my channel. I forget, I think it was summer of last year. I made a video of all the things to think about whenever it comes to going to a workshop. Here's the biggest thing though. I'll tell you right now, please go watch it because there's safety information and there's things like that. But the biggest thing I'm going to tell you is first of all, do you know the name of your instructor? I would love to know if I know that person. I'll tell, and I'll give you a message to give to that person. But if you know the name, let me know. But basically, the big thing is just know that you don't have to worry. When you go to a Wim Hof method workshop, it's all you. It's all your choice. I don't know, Tommy. Well, tell Tommy I said hey anyway. But it's all your choice when you go to one of these workshops. You're never going to be forced into anything you don't want to do. You're never going to have to worry about being made fun of or whatever. When it comes down to it, it's all about how far you want to go, and you make that choice. So don't feel pressure. Don't feel like there's any expectation on you. Really, I've taught and I've done a lot of Wim Hof method workshops. I've had thousands of individuals come through my courses or through my workshops. So I've seen a lot of people do workshops, and I've seen, a little bit of everything. What is likely going to be the case is you're going to have a great time, and you're going to learn a lot, and you're going to come away with a lot of questions that you can ask your instructor later on, or you can come to this channel. I probably have a YouTube video about it. But it's going to be a fun thing, and don't be nervous. Yeah, there's going to be an ice bath. Hopefully you've taken a few cold showers. It's good to prepare. So take some cold showers, and I know it's tomorrow, maybe take a cold shower tonight, just, nothing major, but take a few cold showers and just go into it knowing that there's no expectations on you, and you're doing this for your health and well-being. It's not to prove anything to anybody. And actually you're going to know whenever you get there, you're going to see a lot of people who are very like-minded individuals, people that are just like you, who are looking to do something for their health and well-being. And you're going to have a great time. You'll probably meet some people there that are really awesome. I've had people fall in love at my workshops. Yes, you can find love in an ice bath. I mean, it's pretty rare. It's not like romance is going to happen in an ice bath for most people. Actually, though, I do have some pictures. I don't know if I ever shared that on my Instagram, but there was a couple that came, and they had it wasn't like it was anything R or X rated or anything, but they had a nice romantic moment in one of my ice baths. It was awesome. People just go to these things. We go to these things to improve ourselves and not to prove anything to anybody. So just be excited and remember that it's all for your benefit, and your instructor is going to guide you through. And I wish I knew where in the world are you, Sat Strass? If you don't mind me knowing. If you're, well, anyway, it's going to be fun. You're going to have a great time. Let's see a few more questions, and then we'll get out of here, and I'll let everybody get into. It's in Finland, okay? So yeah, you know what? Just go into it knowing that you've got nothing to prove to anybody, and that everybody there is going to be a little nervous. Everyone's a little nervous when, like, the first part of the workshop is going to be focused on the breath work. The last part of the workshop is focused on the ice bath. And let me tell you this, you're going to feel so good when you get out of that ice bath. you're going to feel amazing getting into it because you're going to overcome the fear that you feel right now. That's the beauty. This fear that you feel, you will break it. It will be because you can do it. So go into it and you're going to have a great time. A few questions and then we'll have a great weekend. Let's see here. Rex Mix. Hey, Jesse, in your breathwork book for CO2 tolerance, you recommend doing bottom triangle. Yes, I do. Is there any reason that you recommend this over the Buteyko reduced breathing method? Okay, so the reason why I don't go into Buteyko in my book is because Buteyko is a school of thought that is pretty extensive. I think I really do like Patrick McEwen's book, The Oxygen Advantage. He has a really simplified version of Buteyko. For my athletes, though, typically the reason why I do bottom triangle and big bottom triangle, and actually, if you in my Patreon club, I just dropped a guided big bottom triangle CO2 training guided breathwork session. But the biggest reason why I with my athletes specifically, and also people who have a lot of tension and a lot of times anxiety, is because you have a low tolerance to CO2. The reason why I do big bottom triangle and bottom triangle is because they're a lot easier. And in my book, I didn't want to, I wanted to give something to people that was applicable, very, very easy to apply to your life, not something very complicated, and something you can use it that day, and it doesn't take an enormous amount of skill. And so that's it was pretty straightforward. It's very easy and it's effective. It actually, I mean, you can go into Buteyko, and I think it's a fantastic technique. So all the things that are in there, I think is really cool. In fact, one of my friends out in California, he's really into Buteyko, and I've learned a lot from him, and I'm into it too. But when it comes down to it, I wanted to give people something that was really applicable to their lives, something that they could apply that day. And I use it with my athletes because it's such a simple thing to do big bottom triangle. I think I have a copy of the book. If you take a look at, let's see here, in my breathing protocols, let's see, not hypoxic training. Where am I? CO2 tolerance. So I do also do big bottom triangle variables, like whenever you do the bottom triangle with exercise. And then also in addition to that, balanced breathing. So on page 153, for those of you in the class with your textbooks, on page 153, I talk about balanced breathing with exercise. Those are the ones that are most likely not to, I don't want to give people stuff that's so complicated that they mess it up. Not to say that Buteyko is incredibly complicated, but this is so much simpler and it works. So, hey, that's why I did it. I have nothing against it. Thanks for that question, Rex Mix. That was a really good question. Colin says, I love breathwork, but it aggravates my ears. I have high frequency hearing loss and tinnitus. It's tinnitus or tinnitus. Maybe it's both. It's both, I think. From noise exposure, breathwork makes it louder and my ears feel plugged up. Okay, so here's a few things. I'm going to give you some advice, Colin. First of all, I'm sorry about the tinnitus. It's something that, there are methods of treating that I've heard about, but I know that nothing is 100% and most people will have it the rest of their lives. I'm sorry, you know that probably, but it's it kind of sucks. And I hate that for you. Here's what I will tell you, though. There are a few things that I will say. For many of my clients, they do find that using music helps. And then the other thing is treating your air. So especially if you are doing breath work in the wintertime, especially. And actually, that was the thing that I was going to talk about the most today. So thank you for bringing me back to the topic that I was going to start talking about an hour ago. But you need to treat your air. So a lot of us, especially in the wintertime, will have really dry air and it causes a lot of sinus problems. Also, if you inhale too violently through your nose and you haven't trained your nose very well, and I'll talk about that in a sec, it can really cause ear problems. And I've done that to myself and it sucks. So here's what I suggest. Nasal breathing all day long. Okay. Nasal breathing as much as you possibly can. And then whenever you find that it's difficult to do nasal breathing, just do slow nasal breathing, or there is a technique. I'm going to give this technique to you guys for sticking around this long. Okay. So there's a technique called Coomer breathing. And this isn't even in my book. Okay. So here's a little simple trick, guys. Thank you for sticking with me. So Coomer breathing is basically, sometimes I call it the third nostril breathing. And this is especially for helping you not irritate your nose when you're doing nasal inhales with your breath work, because nasal inhaling is ideal for any kind of breath work. But sometimes our nose is it's going to mess things up. So if you make your mouth into a third nostril, you have three nostrils. And I know that sounds weird, but basically Coomer is going to look like this. Here, I'll let you listen to it. So it's going to be like, essentially you try to even out all of the air coming in and out of your face, in this case, as if this third nostril will take 1/3 of the air. So you're trying to even it out. You're giving your nose a break. You're giving your sinuses a break. And ideally that helps. Now, here's the thing. You can do Coomer meditation. Coomer meditation is really cool. But basically, anyway, I'm getting off topic here, but essentially, yeah, treat your air, make sure it's not overly dry air, because it's easy to let that happen. And so many of my clients are like, no, my air is fine. And then we do the humidity detection, and it's like, no, it was really low. So make sure you don't have overly dry air. If you need to just have a humidifier next to your bed, and like think about your nasal health, because that's really going to be a big deal. But yeah, I wish we could do more about your tinnitus. I hate that. Music often helps. And there's so many breathing techniques out there that you don't have to do just one. I would say 4-7-8 breath is probably going to be your best friend. If you want more on that, we can talk later. Let's see here. Let's see. I did not see the interview, Stephen Miller. I did not see that interview. I saw that it was done, but I did not watch it. Cold versus hot. I am not sure Wim managed to convince him of trying the method, though. Well, yeah, I'm a big fan of heat therapy, and I'm a big fan of cold therapy. I'm a big fan of contrast, going back and forth. So yeah, I didn't watch it. I started watching it actually, and then it kind of got off to a slow start, and then I was busy and I just didn't get a chance to watch the whole thing. So yeah, I wish I could comment more on that, but I just really can't. Mississippi River is 40 degrees Fahrenheit here in Minnesota. Second summer is coming, my friend. Yes, Brock, that is right. Second summer, Brandon's talking about too. All right, let's see here. Do you see hallucinations behind closed eyelids during intense breathing techniques? I have before. It's not necessarily behind my closed eyes. I've seen hallucinations with my open eyes after intense breathing sessions. I've seen hallucinations with closed eyes, but I wouldn't say it's necessarily behind my eyelids. It's kind of hard to describe how that works. Some of them are visual, some of them are audio. Hey, Vegan Freedom, good night. Thanks so much for being here. Colin, thanks, Jesse, for entertaining and enlightening discussion. All right, guys, I want to thank you guys for being here, and I want to encourage you to unplug from the chaos now and then. Yeah, it's okay to check, and it's okay to know what's going on in the world, but don't let that drive you crazy. Remember that we have to take good care of ourselves. And if you want to change the world, change yourself for the better, because once you've done that, if you're changing yourself for the better, you are changing the world for the better, because that is a person that you can change. So hard to change other people. Ask any coach or teacher, change yourself for the better. You're going to change the world for the better. Guys, thanks so much. I have had really a great time. This has really just been a fun Friday for me, and I really do appreciate you guys being here. Guys, I'm doing these every week, And so please, if you haven't already bought the book, please buy the book. If you haven't tried base, guys, 20% off. Help out this show and help your fellow man out everywhere you can. Be kind to everybody. And guys, I'll see you next week, 2:00 Eastern time on Friday. And of course, I'm hoping to have some other videos out soon. So guys, thanks so much. Have a great weekend.